Hi everybody, this is Professor Wells and we're going to be going over Chapter 10, which is over dental amalgam. In the United States, dental amalgam has been used successfully for the restoration of teeth for more than 175 years. Millions of amalgam restorations are placed each year. Amalgam is a direct placement material that is used in the posterior region of the mouth, made of a combination of metals. No other direct restorative material has the durability, ease of handling, and good physical characteristics of amalgam. Safety of this product has been called into question, but a study concluded that it's still safe for human use. The alloy used to produce dental amalgam is composed predominantly of silver, but also contains copper and tin. A variety of other metals such as palladium, iridium, or zinc may be added in smaller quantities to produce specific properties. When the silver-based alloy is mixed with mercury, the reaction that occurs is called amalgamation, and the material that is produced is called dental amalgam. Each of these particle shapes contributes certain handling characteristics to the amalgam. Irregularly shaped particles are formed by shaving fine particles of an ingot of the alloy with a lathe. The particles are sifted to separate them into fine or ultrafine particles. Spherical particles are produced by spraying or atomizing a mist of molten alloy into an inert gas. Spherical particles are formed as the atomized droplets cool. Admixed particles consist of a mixture of lathe-cut and spherical particles. Part A of the figure shows a scanning electron micrograph of admixed alloy showing a mixture of irregularly shaped particles and spherical particles. Part B of this picture shows an SEM of spherical alloy with spherical particles of various sizes. Dental alloys for amalgam are composed mainly of silver and tin. Copper is added to replace some of the silver to lessen the brittleness. Modern digital alloys are considered to be high in copper content, usually 13 to 30%, compared with their predecessors, which had 4 to 6% copper by weight, 4 to 6%. They generally contain 40% to 70% silver and 12 to 30% tin. They are mixed with mercury, 42 to 52% by weight. Manufacturers may also add indium, palladium, and zinc. Zinc may inhibit corrosion by reducing the oxidation of the other metals in the amalgam. In low copper amalgams, zinc is responsible for gradual expansion for the amalgam over time when moisture contamination is present during placement. When the alloy in powder form is mixed with the mercury, a chemical reaction occurs. The setting transformation is also known as amalgamation. The mixture has a putty-like consistency that can be packed into the cavity preparation. Over the next several minutes, the mix becomes firmer. During the firming phase, the amalgam can be carved to the anatomic shape of the tooth. Once it reaches its initial set, it no longer can be carved. It is firm, but is not fully reacted. It is relatively brittle at this point, and it takes up to 24 hours for most amalgams to gain their maximum strength. The first phase, called the gamma phase, is the silver alloy phase. It is the strongest phase and involves the least corrosion. The second phase is the gamma 1 phase, which consists of mercury reacting with the silver. It is strong and corrosion resistant. The third phase is the gamma 2 phase, and this consists of the reaction of mercury with tin. Gamma 2 is weak and corrodes easily. Tarnish is an oxidation that attacks the surface of the amalgam and extends slightly below the surface. It causes a dark, dull appearance that is not destructive to the amalgam and results from contact with oxygen, sulfides, and chlorides. The rougher the surface, the more it tends to tarnish. Polishing of amalgams is best done after the restoration has set for a period of 24 hours or longer. The figure shows a low copper amalgam restoration showing surface tarnish, margin deterioration, and corrosion. Corrosion is a chemical reaction between amalgam and substances in saliva or food, resulting in oxidation of the amalgam. It can occur when two dissimilar metals interact in a solution that contains electrolytes, which is in our saliva. An electrical current is generated between the metals, much like a battery, in a process called galvanism, resulting in corrosion. It weakens the amalgam over time, can stain surrounding tooth structure as corrosion products enter the dentinal tubules, and can lead to deterioration of the margins. Creep. It's not always just some guy sitting at the end of the bar staring at you and your friends. It is also in dental materials as well. Creep in dental amalgams refers to the gradual change in shape of the restoration from compression by the opposing dentition. This phenomenon is associated with the gamma 2 phase seen with lower copper alloys and results in deterioration in margins. High copper alloys exhibit far less creep. Some expansion and contraction occurs during the setting reaction of the amalgam. If it contracts excessively, it will open gaps at the margins and contribute to microleakage. And if the material expands excessively, it puts pressure on the cusps and can cause fracture. Dimensional change should not occur in newly packed amalgam. Low copper amalgams containing zinc are prone to expansion over time if they are exposed to moisture during placement. The gradual expansion after placement is called delayed expansion. This figure shows delayed expansion of amalgam. So here you can see, definitely see how much the silver filling here has expanded. It's not even flush with the tooth anymore. Amalgams are the strongest of the directly placed restorative materials and is stronger in compression than composite or glass ionomer. They are relatively weak in tension. If amalgams are too thin in areas, they may be broken by the biting forces. In shallow cavity preparations, the thickness of the dentin remaining over the pulp is usually adequate to dissipate the heat or the cold. In deeper cavity preparations or in teeth that were sensitive prior to the placement of an amalgam, a base or liner should be used for the comfort of the patient because amalgam is a good conductor of heat and cold. The dentist selects the dental alloy on the basis of his or her personal preference for its handling characteristics. High copper alloys are used almost universally because they have superior properties to lower copper alloys. The amalgam must be handled properly from the start through the entire placement process if the restoration is to be successful. Use of pre-measured capsules is the most hygienic way to work with these materials. Chances for contamination of material or spills are fewer. Powder and mercury are mixed together in a mechanical device called a triturator or amalgamator. Each manufacturer of amalgam materials provides specific time and speed specifications regarding the mixing of a particular material. Under triturated amalgam appears dry and crumbly and sets too quickly. Over triturated amalgam appears wet and sets quickly, producing heat. Properly triturated amalgam has a satin-like appearance. After mixing, the amalgam is removed from the capsule and is placed into an amalgam well. The amalgam is picked up in small increments with the use of an amalgam carrier. Condensers are used to work the material into small areas of the preparation. Condensing is done to remove the porosity in the amalgam and to adapt the material to the walls of the prep. The preparation must be overfilled to allow room for carving contours and to remove excess mercury that has been forced to the surface during the condensation process. If excess mercury is left, physical and mechanical properties will be poor. Burnishing before carving produces a much smoother and denser surface. Burnishing also helps to seal margins and enhances the longevity of the restoration. Carving removes extra material from the cavo-surface margins and allows the missing anatomy to be reformed. Finishing is best done 24 hours or longer after the initial placement to allow crystallization within the amalgam to go to completion. Because a second visit is involved for finishing and polishing amalgam restorations, many clinicians do not polish them. Amalgam is retained in the cavity preparation by parallel walls or undercut walls and through its adaptation to irregularities in the tooth created during the prep. It is not bonded to the tooth surface, but is retained mechanically. So remember the difference between chemical retention and mechanical retention? Amalgams adhere mechanically. Recently, many dentists have begun bonding amalgam with resin bonding agents. This is called the wet resin technique. After etching and application of bonding agent, a dual cure bonding resin is applied to the cavity preparation. And while it's still wet, the amalgam is placed. The wet resin mechanically intermixes with the amalgam during condensation, and when the resin sets, it mechanically locks the amalgam in place and the resin bonds to the tooth. The amount of mercury that is released from a set amalgam is minimal. No substantiated research has proved otherwise. However, concern should be considered from the safety of the patient, dentist and staff, and environment. Do you guys remember how mercury can enter the body through ingestion, direct contact with the skin, and inhalation of vapor? When old restorations are removed, it is important to use a water spray and a high back suction to minimize vapor. If mercury and small particles is ingested, it is not absorbed well and usually excreted. In some offices, the dentist and staff have been found to have higher levels of mercury than the rest of the population in general. OSHA has set an acceptable level of exposure being 0.05 milligrams for a 40-hour work week. Excessive exposure to mercury can cause it to build up in the body faster than it's eliminated, so practicing good mercury hygiene is essential. Amalgam should not be heated because it can release free mercury vapor, so it's important to make sure all amalgam is free from the instruments. Sterilization rooms should be well ventilated, and operatory floors should have surfaces that are non-porous and easy to clean. Carpets and tiled floors with teams tend to track amalgam particles and mercury droplets and are not recommended. Proper PPE should be worn at all times when handling amalgam. When one is disposing of amalgam waste, it's important to do so properly. Commercial airtight containers can be purchased for scrap amalgam disposal and recycling. Although some offices do so, scrap amalgam should never be thrown in the trash. Although dental offices do not contribute as much mercury to the environment as large companies do, it's estimated to be responsible for 50% of the mercury contamination from wastewater entering publicly owned treatment works. It's also been estimated that dentists who remove or use amalgam discharge 3.7 tons of mercury a year. The treatment facilities removing about 90% of the amalgam, but the 10% goes on to the streams, lakes, and rivers and oceans, so it's vital for the dental office to manage their amalgam waste properly. I think I mentioned this before, but beginning, believe it was this year, it's now going to be required for Indiana to have an amalgam separator, which is a special collection device that collects amalgam particles and mercury that might escape into the wastewater. Not all states have mandated this yet, and on page 160 and 161, there are some good charts about mercury exposure and vapor reduction, also what not to do when handling a mercury spill. Dental amalgam is an economical, durable, and versatile material, and it plays a large role in dentistry. Both the patients and staff should be well informed on this material. If you happen to have any questions over the material covered in this PowerPoint, feel free to reach out to me. My email is hwells14@ivytech.edu. Sweet.